Good afternoon, and welcome to the fifth installment of our Learning Circle series on inclusive financing. My name is Wesley Holmes. I am the Director of Strategy and Development with the Southeast Energy Efficiency Alliance. In part 5 of our Learning Circle series, we're going to be talking about program operator models to support on-bill financing programs and cooperative utilities. As always, we will be offering office hours following this session where you can bring additional questions that came to mind, or for folks who are listening to the recording and couldn't join us today, you're welcome to bring your questions to our next office hours sessions with Dr. Holmes Hummel. They'll be from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday, June 2nd. Please remember, you're welcome to call in with just updates on your specific project or anything you might have missed or clarity you needed on this particular session, or just to let us know how things are going on your end and other things you'd like to hear about. If you want to submit things to me in advance, my email address will be made available in the slide deck, and you can send those out to me ahead of time so we can make sure to have the answers you need when you join us. Now today, we're going to be talking about program operator models, and if you're wondering, why we felt this was important in the Learning Circle series, as we've gone through these processes with a number of utilities around the region, we found that addressing available capacity within the utility is always one of the principal barriers people have to address when designing and developing a program. It's just a lot of these cooperatives serve small territories or even large territories, but with limited staffing, and that puts a lot of strain on their ability to offer new program offerings. And so they are always looking for additional support that can help make a program successful. And so in order to do that, a lot of utilities will often outsource implementation of their energy efficiency programs. And so working with a third party to help with on-bill financing is a really natural extension of that traditional business model. Now, a lot of utilities, as this is kind of a relatively new program model, at least for whole home retrofits, a lot of folks are looking for implementers with experience on this front. There's not a ton of them out there, as this is a relatively new service. But we are very happy to be joined by one of the pioneers in this space today. And some folks have actually chosen, rather than just wholesale turn it over to a third-party implementer, they can work out a hybrid model where they divide and conquer some of the services that are needed to make these programs available. So we're going to look at all those different options today. Now, this is those of you who've been with us for a while, you recognize this diagram. This is the PAYS model and how the flow of capital and services are set up. You can see there in the bottom right below the utility, that's where the program operator fits in. And they serve as an intermediary between the utility and the solution providers who are out there making the retrofits to the homes. And can also support a variety of other marketing and customer engagement and quality assurance roles within the program model. Now today, we were very lucky to be joined by Ms. Jen Weiss and Tammy Agar, who are going to be taking us through these lessons today on different models you could take, or what those look like on the ground, which Tammy has terrific experience with utility. And so from here, I'm going to turn it over to my friend Jen Weiss, who's going to take us through all of the functions that can be performed by a program operator.
Great. Thanks, Wesley, and welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining the call today. This should be a fun call because as we're getting more into the weeds here and talking about program operators, it means that you're seriously considering looking at an on-bill energy efficiency program. And so I think this will be hopefully very helpful to you, and as you're analyzing your own capabilities to run a program, and then as you're looking to join up with a third-party operator. So I'm going to talk very briefly right now about some of the functions that can be performed by a program operator, just to give you a sense for the things that you should be considering as you're looking at your own staff's capabilities. Next slide, please. So here's a list, and this is by no means an all-encompassing list of different program operator functions that can be performed, but I did want to give you some of the most frequently used functions and administrative abilities. And just very quickly, it's kind of a checklist, and as I'm running through it, you can be thinking in your mind about whether your own organization might be able to handle these. But the first one, identifying the high potential sites, is really reviewing the utility energy use data to help develop target lists for who you want to target with your program. The next one is the marketing of it, developing an outreach strategy to reach those prospective participants. The next one is contractor relationship management. So this can be everything from developing a request for proposal for contractors to be in your program, to negotiating the contracts, to doing the final selection of the approved contractors. The next one is the workforce development. So how do you confirm the qualifications of the different contractors and provide the training that's needed to them? And in some cases, there may not be a pool of eligible contractors, so you'll need to think about how to coordinate with professional trainers to get the eligible pool ready for your program. The scheduling of work piece is important because as your contractors go out to do the work, you want to make sure that you're scheduling with the customer and the contractor at a time that's appropriate for everyone. And then the quality control and quality assurance are both very important pieces to verify the quality of work following the completion of the project. Of course, the quality assurance is ensuring the overall quality of the work, while the quality control refers to the testing of the work that it was done according to what the scope of work was. The billing piece of it is a facilitation of the payment to the contractor and also getting it onto the utility bill to the customer. And then the EM&V piece of it is important after the retrofit is done to compare the billing data reports as we go forward to make sure that the upgrades that we did are meeting the estimated savings that we anticipated. And finally, last but certainly not least, is the customer satisfaction and follow-up. Continually, we want to solicit feedback from the participants to make sure that the work is done correctly and also that they are satisfied with the entire process. So as you can see, there are quite a number of operator functions here, and what I want to discuss next is that by no means does your organization need to do any of these or all of these at the same time. This is why we have third-party program operators that can help. Next slide, please. So the next thing I want to talk about are these different models that we can use to help with these functions if we have done an evaluation within our own organization that we don't have the staff capacity to do them all. Next slide, please. There's three main program operator models that I will briefly talk about now, but then get into more detail on the next slide. So the first one is in-house implementation. So a utility with the adequate and qualified staffing capacity could choose to operate the entire on-bill program internally using their own in-house expertise and doing all of the program operator responsibilities that I just discussed. Secondly, on the other side of the coin is the third-party program operator, which is usually for utilities with limited staff capacity. In these cases, an on-bill program could be run almost entirely by a third-party administrator, or perhaps with a few of the functions performed by the utility and the remaining performed by the third party. But generally what we see is this hybrid model, a model right in between the two, which enables the utility to select program operator functions that it will perform itself based on its own analysis of its staff capacity, and then contract with a third party to perform the remaining functions. And next slide, Wesley. So this is just a comparison of the three that I just talked about. This is from the utility's perspective. So with each of the three models that I've been discussing, the one obviously that uses the most responsibility from the utility is the in-house model. So you can see here that every function in the in-house model is done by the utility itself or internal staff within the utility. Whereas the third-party operator does almost none of the responsibilities in-house, and they outsource that to a third party. Sometimes, though, they will choose to do a few of the functions, including the identification, looking at the energy use data, as well as the billing piece of it is important for the utility to be involved. But the hybrid example, like I mentioned before, is usually the one that we see most often. And in this example, just about half of the functions are performed by the utility, and the other half by the third party. And Tammy's going to go into a little bit more detail of what that looks like for the utilities that she works with. Next slide, please. So really quickly, here are 6 examples of programs that are very successful in operation today, just to give you a feel for that. It is across the board, different models work for different utilities. The House Smart Kansas program run by Midwest Energy is an in-house program run entirely by their own staff. In fact, it's one dedicated staff that runs the program. And similarly, the Municipal Smart Start program in New Hampshire run by Eversource is also run by one staff person doing all of the in-house functions. However, MACID out of Kentucky has done both the third-party and the hybrid models with the co-ops that they work with in the HouseSmart Kentucky program. So the 4 of their first co-ops, they did a complete third-party model where they ran all of the functions. And then the 2 most recent co-ops that have joined are more of a hybrid model where the utility has chosen to run some of the functions on their own. And then finally, the utility program is also a hybrid model, and it's been working very well in Arkansas with the Help Pays model, and Tammy's going to talk a little bit more about that, but also just more recently with the Upgrade to Save model with Roanoke Electric in North Carolina. Next slide, please. So I think the best thing to do at this point is really to dig in and to see what this program operator model could really look like in action. And so Tammy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Why, thank you, Jen, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining yet another, hopefully good and informational session brought to you by SEIA. With that, let's just go right into the weeds. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so as Jen mentioned, utility has really been running strong with this hybrid model, and our benefit corporation has actually spent quite a bit of resources sort of honing in on what seems to generally be working well out there in the field, where sort of innately within the co-op's typical functions, it's pretty simple and straightforward for them to take over certain components and us to definitely stick to the components that we're real familiar with. That said, this is not to say that it couldn't be tweaked somewhat, but generally speaking, this that I'm about to talk about seems to work really well. So first of all, the blue color would indicate the utility on this screen, and the burgundy-ish color would indicate utilities function. And where you see it shared in parentheses, it's kind of got the first color is the party that's primarily responsible, with the other, the other party kind of doing a little bit of something to help make that task work. So identify high potential sites. This is always under the utility umbrella to take care of. Market, that's obviously with utility bill information. Until a member is actually enrolled in the program, we don't have access to anything like that for obvious reasons. So it really is best suited and only suited in the hybrid model anyway to happen with the utility doing it in-house. Marketing, I've got that in blue because the marketing component budget-wise really falls under the utility, but I do have utility there in the shared department because we can do a lot of things, i.e. providing templates, whether it's door hangers or yard signs or trifold brochures or whatever it is. Once we have the design work drawn up, we can make sure that those marketing materials are spread out. So it's kind of a shared function there. Contractor relations is solely under utilities wheelhouse. That's kind of where we really shine as a company, is making sure contractors are not only a part of the program, but an integral, very, very critical part of the program. And so we value those relationships, we foster those relationships, and so we pretty much maintain those relationships throughout. Workforce development kind of falls under that same category, kind of, alongside contractor relations, really. We like to promote locally, like to get contractors to build their employee pool from local talent. We encourage, this might be a little different than some folks are used to, but we actually encourage the use of a fewer number of contractors with a larger workforce as opposed to a vast number of contractors, different companies. It's just, we find it a lot better for a number of reasons, but some of the reasons I'll just point to real quickly. If you've got a handful of contractors that are doing really good work, they're probably doing really good work because they're getting a lot of jobs. And nothing makes a contractor show up and do really good work quite like having plentiful jobs in the hopper all the time. Whereas you could take the approach of we want to have a program and we want to have 50 contractors out there for 200 jobs a year, therefore each contractor gets 4 jobs, well, you're not going to be very high up on the totem pole, and the results that you're going to get are not going to be nearly as impactful in our experience, nor controllable, quite frankly. So on to the next one is scheduling. Etility has invested in a number of dollars into making sure we have digital capabilities. Our intention as a company is to be able to scale this hybrid model nationally. And so we've been spending an awful lot of money into making sure our functions are digitized and remote, virtual, etc., using all the tools of today. And so scheduling is one such tool. So we take care of that in-house with a shared calendar, and that's a whole other webinar on all the things that this tool will do. But we have customized with Optimizer Energy a platform called Nexus, and that is our essentially user interface for all users in the program, all stakeholders in the program, to follow any participant along from sort of soup to nuts. So scheduling is just one such thing under that. 100% on-site quality control, and then I've got shared in there. This function, what we found was a couple things. One, it was very, very, very important to have 100% on-site quality control, particularly when you are in the on-bill space where you do not have incentive dollars to offset costs, and where the participant is paying 100% of the load of the cost. So what we like to do is make sure that we've got trained quality control inspectors on site to kind of be our eyes and ears again, so we can make sure and do the quality assurance piece by seeing the photos and the task sheet signed off on by the quality control inspector. These quality control inspectors are trained by Etility. We use the utilities in-house staff. Typically it's linemen or women out there in the field, or maybe high bill complaint department folks. We give them a training, a credential, and they pretty much show up on site on the last day of the retrofit, and they can, what we call, test out a home and upload the information from their quality control inspection onto that Nexus platform. The reason it's in shared there is because we assist them in making sure they're gathering the right information, and then we take that information. We also troubleshoot. We take that information and we create the quality assurance, or what we call a closeout, which is when we gather all of the information from beginning to end and make sure we have a good retrofit with the results that we needed. We have, as part of the on-site quality control, we have new blower door and duct blaster numbers, new pressure pan numbers. We're able to photograph post retrofit work, so we have a very good record of everything that was done to the home, as well as the tools and the results that the tools and CFM can show us. We also have, of course, the ability to look at meter data as part of our quality assurance toolkit, and we do that under Utilities umbrella. Billing is 100% under that of the utility, and that actually automatically happens through Nexus as well. It can be set up that way. EM&V is shared with us, primarily leading that function, because we've got the software capabilities to do that, and we've partnered with Optimizer as a third-party verifier to verify the post-test out numbers, as well as the KWH and KW at peak reduction. And then lastly, customer satisfaction, with utility leading that, but shared. We think that, sometimes it's when you ask somebody how you did and you're part of the solution, they might not tell you the truth. So we like to get a kind of a 1-2 punch on that coming from both directions. So next slide, please. Now, I spent quite a bit of time on that last slide because I knew this one was going to come up with a lot more of the verbiage that I just kind of went over. But for those of you who, want to know the details and wanted to have them visually in front of you, as opposed to me just talking them over, I have done that pretty much on this slide. So pretty much just written down components of what I just said are right there for you. Next slide, please. So lastly, and this is really, a quick presentation today, I really wanted to kind of give you some highlights by the numbers of what we've been able to accomplish in the Help PACE program here in Arkansas. And these top numbers here are really talking about the first 9 months of program rollout, which happened the last 9 months of 2016. So these are our year-end stats. So Ouachita Electric Cooperative went over and switched from our on-bill finance or loan program in April of 2016. And as you can see, in the first 9 months of switching over to the tariff, we were able to reach 3.7% of the total members enrolled in 2016, and their total membership, which is right around 6,500 members. 86% of total enrolled received a cost-effective offer, meaning we identified a cost-effective opportunity for an upgrade at that location. Of course, following the 80-20 rule that I think has been clarified in earlier discussions in this learning circle. 91% of cost-effective offers were accepted. Yes, that's not a typo, 91% said yes. Of the ones that were accepted, 100% offers to renters had a yes response. So very, very impactful period, but we're so far batting 1,000 or 100 for the renter demographic. And by the way, this is all in an area of the country where the median household income is $29,000. And as a comparison for Arkansas, here in Little Rock, where I'm talking with you today, the household income, median household income is $45,000. So the last bit for me to talk about, I get asked this question all the time, and I toyed around with whether I should go ahead and put it on this or not, and I decided, well, this is sort of an in the weeds conversation, so why not? So I'm sharing with you all here under the 2017 number there is the basic operations charge and requirement for utility as a company to set up and co-operate a tariff on-bill program for a utility, and right now that utility would be a municipally owned or a cooperative anywhere in the country. So how it kind of works is this: we have a per participant charge that is $300 to $500, and the reason why there's a range in there is because if a member only gets an offer and they elect to not go forward with the offer, then that limits our fee to $300. If, on the other hand, they do elect to go forward with the offer, thus requiring us to do the quality assurance component, yada, yada, then our fee for that goes up to the $500 number. So it's an either $300 or a $500 per participant charge that utility receives whenever a participant goes into the program. The minimum participation for a utility is 200 offers per year and a 2-year agreement. That can be 400 offers per year. Of a few utilities right now looking at that, they think 200 is too low. They're considering 400. 400 really is the magic number, and if it's 2 years or less, that's fine with us. We would want to work with you on that, though, and make sure we're not too aggressive, particularly on our first year. And then one of the things that are particular to utility, as Jen mentioned, not really sure of too many other hybrid program operators in the country yet besides MESED, and I'm not sure they're operating outside Kentucky. But regardless, our services right now are including the PAYS license, the optimizer customization, and the Nexus software. All are included in that $300 to $500 per participant number. And the reason why we're doing that is because we wanted to remove, just like with members when they, or customers when they participate in the program, we wanted to remove the upfront costs for utilities to do so as well. And so this is a new value proposition that we pretty much just rolled out about 3 weeks ago. And so I did decide to go ahead and put this on there for everybody to see today, and hope that that's well received in the community. One last thing on that, Etility is a benefit corporation, so everything we do is for societal or environmental benefit, and we just feel real strongly that the message here is we want to scale. We don't need to make a lot of money, on one job. We want to get an awful lot of jobs and really make a difference. So that's what our numbers hopefully reflect. So next slide, please, which is the last for me. Oh, did we miss the graph?
We may have. Hang on one second. We'll see if I can get it back.
I'll just go ahead and start talking, and if Wesley, you're able to pull it up, that's great. But I know it so well, I can just mention it. A lot of folks ask us, what kind of retrofits, what sorts of retrofits are these? In other words, what level of measures are you typically installing? And so, well, there we go. Boom, right on the money. Thank you. Good timing. So there you go. There's a nice graph of each of the most common upgrades, which we find are cost-effective in the majority of sites that we have worked to date. And you can see the percentages are fairly even across the board. And that's because we're pretty much doing whole house retrofits on the vast majority of homes. For me, that's the last slide. Wesley, I'm going to go ahead and send it over to you, and hopefully we've got plenty of time, it looks like we do, to take people's questions, whatever and wherever they come from.
Great. Thank you, Tammy and Jen. And yeah, we are now into our question portion of the presentation. We're glad that we can offer ample time for folks to bring out any questions they have. For those with questions, in your taskbar on the right-hand side, there is a drop-down tab to ask your questions. You can type them in, and I'll field them to our presenters. I'm going to go ahead and lead off. As Jen alluded to, there's a pretty wide variety of services that utility can contract to get additional support for. So Tammy, I wanted to ask you, how do y'all work with utilities to help them figure out which services they need and which ones they could handle themselves?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you for asking it. Well, we have an onboarding process that is actually kind of a step number 2. The first thing we like to do is we kind of like to do a meet and greet and sort of gain not only knowledge from each other, but about particularly the culture of the co-op as well, or the muni, as well as the location, the kind of the local flavor, if you will, in terms of resources. And so what seems to be the most efficient and least costly is to be able to come out on site and spend just a day or two and ask a number of questions and sort of do some good socializing with key partners, would-be partners, potential partners, and just kind of do some discovery. And then once we have some pretty basic information answered and whatnot, we'll turn around and suggest an onboarding or a training session, assuming, of course, that we come to agreement. We would be able to put together an onboarding or program, if you will, at a determined time that's good for everybody to come back and essentially socialize the program, or what would be program, to the staff, key staff, and then personnel sort of as it makes sense. So there's a kind of a two-step process to that. The first one is a pretty quick meet and greet, exchange of ideas, sort of get to see what's going on in the co-op, how it sort of functions. So I'm talking about basic things, you know, how's the billing currently set up, how are member services or customer service representatives, where are they and how many are there, and what do they do throughout the day, and kind of get an idea of where certain components might best fit and may not be a fit, and sort of figure that out. And then from there, if assuming again we get to an agreement, then we can put together an onboarding / training process. So that's a great question. Thank you for asking it. And by the way, our fee to go out and do that is travel reimbursement for the most part. It's a pretty cheap way to find out, and again, it's most efficient. We could do that or do about 15 phone calls, so we like to just go out and spend the day.
Oh, great, thank you, Tammy. I guess it's kind of a follow-up to that. I guess based on your experience, and Jen, I'll open this up to you as well. Is there any particular line of activities that you find most utilities can benefit from some additional support, or kind of just most common that they just don't have additional capacity to deal with this particular thing more often than not?
Ken, you want to take that, or you want me to take that?
Oh, why don't you take it first, and then I'll follow up with anything else.
Okay. Yeah, definitely the contractor management piece and contractor relations, workforce development. Those components, along with quality assurance, are the areas in particular I would say that our utilities are definitely wanting to outsource, in my experience.
Yeah, and I would just add to that the workforce development piece of it, the training, especially in areas that don't have an eligible pool of contractors. It's really important to get some assistance with getting a training program rolling so that we do get some contractors there that can do the work.
Okay. Thank you, guys. At this point, I'll open up if there's any additional questions from the audience. Feel free to drop those in. But failing that, we are happy to wrap up early and give folks back some of their time and thank our presenters. I guess, Jen or Tammy, is there any parting thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I don't really have parting thoughts. I know you guys have the decision tool for utility managers. You guys have made that available, and I think that's just a great resource for folks to look at and sort of discern if a program operator is right for them or not. Just a good hard look at that, and just I welcome the opportunity to share what we're offering out there, and I'm a little uncomfortable. Hope this one didn't seem like a commercial or something, but there's not a lot of operators, to my knowledge, that do this, and so this just seemed like the perfect place to get this information at least out there. So thank you for inviting me to do that.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for presenting. Yeah, we know you're definitely filling a needed niche in the marketplace right now. So thank you for being a trailblazer in that regard.
Sure.
Jen?
Yeah, and I would just add, as far as just assistance as utilities are going through this process of analyzing their own in-house capabilities, I think Tammy's program, as she was just discussing, was a very cost-effective way to do many of these program functions. But if the utility does choose to do it themselves, please feel free to reach out to us at the working group and through SEIA, through Wesley, and we can help you get in touch with others who are doing it in-house to get a feel for what that would take from a staff capacity perspective.
Agreed. Thank you, Jen. All right. And so to wrap up, I'll just remind folks, so for our office hours, for folks who want to follow up along this particular topic or have any questions to address your specific utility needs, please remember to join us on Friday, June 2nd from 1 to 2 p.m. for office hours with Dr. Hummel, and I'm sure if she's available, Tammy may join us as well. In addition to that, our next webinar coming up is going to be on June 15th, where we're going to be looking at establishing a reserve fund for tariff on-bill financing programs, which is the other significant hurdle folks tend to come up with about making these programs available, is having some sort of element of security to try these out. So we're going to be exploring all the different options and questions regarding setting one of those funds up. So we look forward to having you guys join us on the 15th, and look for your registration links to be arriving from GoToWebinar in the next couple of weeks. So with that, we will close out our session for the day, and thank you all for taking the time to join us, and we will follow up with additional notes, copies of the slide deck, and as well as links to the recording. So thank you all for joining us, and have a nice day.